China and the US are at war, and these are the front lines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell, and I want to thank you. Thank you for continuing to leave honeypot comments below these videos as part of Operation Honeypot. The CCP hates it when you do that because it shows you're actively participating in China Uncensored, and it makes YouTube keep showing our videos to more people. And there's another thing you can do to help. We've created a website where you can directly support the work we're doing to expose the CCP, and as an added, very substantial bonus, we make extra deep dive episodes each week, plus live streams exclusively for supporters like you. Only on our website. Check out ChinaUncensored.tv to learn more. The US and China are waging a battle over the Pacific island nation of Palau. This could mean the difference between victory and defeat in the event of an all-out war, leading many to wonder, what's so special about Palau, besides looking like a living desktop background? Palau is strategically located towards the end of the second island chain, which the US is using to contain Chinese expansion into the Pacific. Not coincidentally, it was also vital for the US when fighting Imperial Japan during World War II. So much so that the US fought what one general called one of the most vicious and stubbornly defended battles over it. That's why China's on a campaign to gain control over Palau. Currently, Palau is a US ally and one of the few nations in the world with diplomatic ties to Taiwan over China. The cheek. So the CCP is finding other ways in, like private land grabs. First up on the menu, the southern island of Angar. In 2010, the Palau Senate asked Palau's president to offer Angar as an alternative location for a US airbase, although that didn't end up happening. But 4 years later, Chinese investors began showing an interest in Angar. And by Chinese investors, I mean CCP stooges. For example, this is Tian Hang, also known as Hunter Tien, despite having the squishy body of a gatherer. He's the president of the Palau Overseas Chinese Federation, which functions as an arm of the CCP's United Front Work Department. He also has ties to Overseas Chinese Big Data Group, a Chinese company that works with universities and research institutes affiliated with China's military and public security organs, potentially the only organs in China safe from forcible harvesting. Land records show that in 2014, Tian Hang signed contracts with 4 family groups to lease about 250 acres of land, including near Angar's airstrip and port, for what he said would be a resort. Oh, you mean right where they were talking about building a US base? I didn't realize looking through binoculars at another nation's infrastructure was a theme for a theme park. Tian had help in this endeavor from Palauan elites, like Palau's Minister of Human Resources, Culture, Tourism, and Development. Turned out to be a good investment for the CCP because the US completed an Angar airfield renovation project in 2020, landed C-130 Hercules cargo planes there, also in 2020, and practiced HIMARS deployments in 2022. And while I guess that would make Binocular Land a slightly more amusing amusement park, I still don't think kids will be hyped to vacation there. But that's not where the real pay dirt lies. The US military has spent the past 2 years and more than $118 million clearing 100 acres on Angar for a receiver for its tactical multi-mission over-the-horizon radar, or TACMOR. This project was announced in 2017. Once fully installed, the system will significantly improve the US's ability to detect incoming Chinese hypersonic weapons, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, enemy aircraft, and ships. Imagine if Tian used his nearby land to spy on nearby US communications and systems, or better yet, pre-positioned Chinese drones to attack sensitive US equipment. After all, Ukraine and Israel both did this after sneaking drone components behind enemy lines, and it was super effective. It's not far-fetched to say that China would do the same. Unfortunately for the CCP, according to the Washington Post, Tian's Angar leases have expired. I guess the construction on TACMOR took a little longer than the CCP expected, but that doesn't mean that someone else won't move in. We definitely know that Tian wasn't the only one with eyes on Angar. There's also Wang Kwok Koi, also known by many as Broken Tooth. because apparently poor oral hygiene is intimidating in mafia circles. Watch out for halitosis Henry. Broken Tooth is the former leader of the Macau faction of the 14K Triad, one of the largest Chinese organized crime groups in the world. He also has ties to the CCP's Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference and the Overseas United Working Committee, which in turn has ties to the People's Liberation Army. In 2019, Juan announced plans for a casino resort in Angar, where he would control customs, ports, and an airport. Coincidentally, not long after, the then president of Palau banned foreign nationals with criminal backgrounds. Imagine that, what a coincidence. And in 2020, the US Treasury Department blacklisted Broken Tooth for engaging in drug trafficking, illegal gambling, racketeering, human trafficking, and other criminal activities. You know you're in trouble with the law when your rap sheet basically has etc. on it. But Juan wasn't only interested in Angar. The Washington Post found that Juan was also interested in leasing land next to a second TACMOR site, a transmitter just 60 miles to the north in, okay, I'm gonna do my best to pronounce this, Angar state. Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either, but the CCP had. What are the chances that Juan would choose two spots that just happen to involve US TACMOR? I bet those gambling odds are 1 to 1. The Washington Post reports that Juan's plan for both TACMOR sites ended when he had to leave the country after being banned. But the fact that Juan thought it was possible in the first place should raise a lot of alarms. Why was Juan so confident? Well, it certainly helped that some of the top Palauan elites were on his side, at least initially. Among them was the former governor of Palau's Angar state. He alleges that he never knew about Juan until he Googled his name much later. Yeah, if you're a government official making deals with people, it should be obvious that the first thing you do is Google who you're dealing with. Either he's lying or he's an idiot who only found out about him after Googling how to treat a broken tooth. But Juan wasn't the only suspicious Chinese businessman interested in Angar. There's also Tenshu, no relation to the other Tien we talked about. On the surface, he's just the chairman of a woman's clothing manufacturing company. But he's also a member of the CCP who leads an association with the United Front ties. So he makes bras and backs authoritarians. Makes sense. Either way, he's supporting a bunch of boobs. He has held property in Angar since 2015, but after the US held a public hearing about TACMOR in 2023, Tenshu registered plans to build the 275-room Palau International Grand Hotel, which just so happens to overlook the TACMOR transmitter. Exactly the majestic view tourists want on vacation. There are plenty of other people and properties that Palau and the US need to keep an eye out for. This includes a man named Zhang Zhengrong, who according to a Palau National Security brief has ties to the Fujianese Mafia. Sadly, he doesn't have a terrifying nickname like Gingivitis Jack. He owns the Belmont Hotel, a Chinese property that's near the Malakal Harbor in Koror, which just so happens to be where the US military is planning to expand the Malakal Wharf to accommodate larger vessels. You get the idea. If you hear of resorts, casinos, or hotels being built near sensitive US military sites, chances are the safest bet at those casinos is that they're Chinese-owned threats to national security. There's also a good chance that they're bringing in tons of crime and corruption. If you want to learn more about that, then I highly recommend you look at this exclusive China Uncensored deep dive episode I did on that subject. The link is below. Now, it's not like the US government is oblivious to China's foreign influence operations. The local US embassy is distributing intelligence reports about Chinese foreign influence to Palauan officials. The US has also been expanding national security reviews of real estate deals near military bases. That's a good idea. Palau, meanwhile, has been deporting dozens of people, denying tourist visas and work permits, and adding more names to its list of undesirable aliens, which tangentially sounds like the name for a gritty ALF reboot. This includes the owner of Belmont Hotel, who is now banned from the country. But a lot more needs to be done to counter China. According to a document obtained by the Post, the U.S. Embassy has asked the Trump administration for more assistance, including a senior U.S. law enforcement official with experience in combating Chinese organized crime and a Drug Enforcement Administration agent to tackle trafficking and corruption. The embassy is also asking for 5 U.S. police officers and 2 prosecutors to handle cases involving Chinese subjects. No word yet on whether Trump said yes, but separately, Doge did cancel the final months of a contract for some security assistance in Palau. So there's that. The problem is the U.S. government has historically not prioritized the Pacific Islands as much as it should, even though this could very well be the front lines of a war with China. Unfortunately, the Pacific Islands usually don't come up on the average American's radar. Case in point, when I said Palau at the start of this episode, some folks thought that was a sound effect in the 1960s Batman show. That needs to change. More attention, and with it more pressure, needs to be put on countering Chinese influence in Palau and the rest of the Pacific Ocean, to keep it looking more like a desktop background and less like Binocular World Theme Park. And if you think it's important that we keep covering topics like this that no one else is covering, I invite you to click this button and help us make more episodes. Learn how at ChinaUncensored.tv. Link is below. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.